is a monumental victory for Trump personally, and also, unfortunately, for the power of the American presidency. As the sixth justice majority emphasized, this trend toward having injunctions against dramatic presidential policies is a trend that frustrated Joe Biden and some of his predecessors.
Start with this. In the United States, where the Supreme Court has handed Donald Trump a significant victory, ruling that district judges, federal judges, do not have the authority to impose bans on his executive order. Justices ruled 6-3 in favour of the president in a case built around Trump's executive order on removing birthright citizenship. His order would strip children of undocumented and illegal migrants born in the United States of automatic American citizenship. But is this the monumental ruling Trump has said it is? Let's speak to Philip Lacovara, former Deputy Solicitor General for the United States. Philip, welcome to the programme.
Good evening. Nice to be with you.
Okay, first of all, your assessment of Trump's reaction. He says this has been a monumental ruling. It's great. We keep winning this week. And he thinks this is a blow against what he claims are radical left judges. How would you assess it?
Well, I'm not sure it's a blow against radical left judges, but it is a monumental victory for Trump personally, and also, unfortunately, for the power of the American presidency. As the sixth justice majority emphasized, this trend toward having injunctions against dramatic presidential policies is a trend that frustrated Joe Biden and some of his predecessors when they were overreaching. And that's the real point. These cases, including the one that was decided today by the Supreme Court, are cases in which American presidents, by most accounts, were overreaching their legitimate powers, and the courts tried to stop them. And today, the pro-Trump conservative majority said courts don't have the power to do that.
When you say courts try to stop them, I mean, they don't do so because they feel like it. It's because people have brought cases to them, surely.
Well, that's exactly right. What the court said is, when the president is being accused of taking any kind of unconstitutional action, the only relief that the district courts can grant is relief that is specifically confined to those plaintiffs. So in this case, for example, any of the children of the migrant women who were born in the United States would have the benefit of a declaration that the ban on acquiring American citizenship is unconstitutional, and they will be treated as American citizens. But 4 different district courts throughout the country all concluded that the executive branch could not apply the president's policy to anyone, so that anyone born of an illegal migrant in the United States would have a constitutional right to citizenship. And what the Supreme Court the majority has said, only the people who actually bring the lawsuits are likely to be able to get that kind of constitutional protection. But Trump can keep others from having this unconstitutional policy applied to them and be excluded from what the U.S. Constitution, as all of the courts have said, unambiguously declares, and that is, like the old English precedent, if you're born in the country, you're a citizen of the country.
When will the Supreme Court make its definitive ruling on that actual piece of legislation, on what the Constitution says? Because I understand Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, has talked about October, and a lot can happen between now and then.
Yes, it's highly unlikely that issue will come back to the Supreme Court that quickly. What the court said is the lower courts should reconsider what they should do in light of this decision about the limits on their authority, and then proceed to decide how broad relief they can possibly grant. That process is likely to take far more than from now until October. And what the decision of the Supreme Court means is that for a very considerable period of time, there will be tens of thousands of children born in the United States whose citizenship whose nationality remains up in the air. And that's, as we know, from concerns about statelessness. And you were talking a moment ago about the DR Congo and their controversies. The issues of statelessness is a plague in many parts of the world. And what the U.S. Supreme Court has essentially done is to leave in limbo the nationality or citizenship of tens of thousands of children who are to be born between now and the time this matter gets ultimately resolved.
Yeah, I see that Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, who of course leads the majority in the upper house, is extremely alarmed. And he says, instead of stopping Trump's plans in its tracks, the court has instead ducked the question and bowed to an out-of-control executive branch. So if Philip, the executive branch is out of control and the Supreme Court refuses to act, then who is left to step in to stop what some fear is a slide toward autocracy? If it's Congress, who in Congress will do this?
Well, nobody in Congress will. And the broader significance of today's decision goes well beyond the question of citizenship, because what the court said is basically when the president decrees something, his policy takes effect except to the extent that particular people sue and get a successful ruling in their favor. But the president's policy otherwise is in effect ultimately until the Supreme Court acts on it. So the court has, in a rather bizarre twist, essentially neutered the courts to require the executive branch to obey the Constitution. And that really is the undeniable effect of this until the Supreme Court gets around to deciding the ultimate validity of the president's action. Mm-hmm. And that applies not only to the birthright citizenship, but all of the other initiatives that President Trump or his successors will take that may run afoul of the U.S. Constitution.
And briefly, what does this mean then for the Trump executive orders on temporary protective status for Venezuelans and others, the freezing of federal funding, and also cutting support for schools because of their policies on DEI? Now, all of those were challenged in federal court, and some of his policies were stopped or suspended. Does that mean they are probably going to fall away?
Well, they'll all have to be reconsidered, but to the extent that the courts were using those examples of unconstitutional action as a basis for enjoining the president or his various cabinet officers from enforcing those policies against others, in addition to the individual plaintiffs, those decisions will go by the boards unless anybody else affected, any other university, any other taxpayer, or you name it, brings his own lawsuit or its own lawsuit and says, as other district courts have held, this is unconstitutional action which affects me too, and I want the same kind of judgment that they've gotten. And so that's obviously going to be a very disruptive, expensive, chaotic state of affairs when traditionally the view has been when a court rules that something is unconstitutional, the government is supposed to accept that and obey it until it's overturned, but not say, well, I'll recognize that decision only with respect to the plaintiff, but I'm entitled to continue to act unconstitutionally as to everybody else.
Wow, times have certainly changed. Philip Lacovara, former Deputy Solicitor General for the United States, thank you very much indeed.